Hey friends, hello and welcome back to Learn with Lakshman. Today we'll talk about tenses in English. Let us first of all try to understand what is the tense. The term tense traditionally refers to the way a verb changes its ending to express the time at which an action takes place. Based on this notion, English has only two tenses, namely present tense and past tense. Other temporal meanings are conveyed through auxiliary verbs like will and shall. The word tense comes from the Latin word tempus, which means time. Speaking of the time, we can classify time into three major parts as time past, time present, and time future. Based on this notion, we can say that we have three main tenses, that is past tense, present tense, and the future tense. However, in English, we have only two forms of the verb, that is present form and the past form of the verb. The present form of the verb indicates present tense, while the past form of the verb indicates past tense. However, the future tense is indicated by using will or shall before the present form of the verb. Let us understand this with the help of a few examples. Let us take one example of the verb go. If I have to say a sentence in the present tense, I'll say I go to school. The sentence I go to school has the verb go, which is in the present tense. That means this sentence is the present tense. If this sentence has to indicate a past action, it will be I went to school. So we have two different forms of the verb, go and went. Go is the present form, while went is the past form. Now, if I am supposed to prepare a sentence indicating future action with the help of verb go, I'll prepare a sentence like I'll go to school. That means I have used the auxiliary verb will before the present form of the verb go. This is the reason some of the modern grammarians believe that there are only two tenses in English, that is present tense and the past tense. Future tense, according to them, is not a real tense because the verb in English does not have the future form. So, let's think that there are three tenses in English. That means we can classify time into three main parts as time past, time present, and time future, and we use certain verbs or words to indicate these actions. However, classifying time into these three categories is not enough. We have several aspects of the actions to be told. Therefore, there are some aspects of the tenses, and we also need to understand those aspects. Aspect refers to how an action or state is regarded or experienced with respect to time. Apart from the simple aspect of expression, English has two aspectual contrasts, perfective and progressive, and sometimes both. With the perfective aspect, we see a period leading up to a known time in the present or past. With the progressive aspect, we see an ongoing event at a known present or past time. The purpose of tense is to express the time at which an action or state occurs. Accordingly, we have actions referring to the present time, the past time, and the future time. The tense of a sentence is indicated by the verb. Similarly, the aspect of the sentence is also indicated by the verb. A verb in a sentence expresses all the three dimensions like time, aspect, and mood. However, we are not going to deal with the mood of the verb in this video. We'll be just talking about tense and aspect of the verb. The time or the tense, present, past, and future, combines with the aspect, progressive or perfective, to form tenses in English. Each tense in English can have a simple form, and each can be combined with the aspect, progressive, perfective, or even both to form 12 tenses. Now let's have a look at all the tenses. Simple present tense or present indefinite tense, present progressive or present continuous tense, present perfect tense, present perfect progressive tense, simple past tense or past indefinite tense, past progressive or past continuous tense, past perfect tense, past perfect progressive or past perfect continuous tense, simple future tense or future indefinite tense, future progressive or future continuous tense, future perfect tense, future perfect progressive or future perfect continuous tense. These are the 12 tenses we've been learning in the schools. The four aspects are simple aspect, progressive aspect, perfective aspect, and perfect progressive aspect. There are 3 tenses and each tense is 4 aspects. That becomes 12. Therefore, we say that there are 12 tenses in English. Now, let's talk about simple present tense in detail. In the time scale, the action of the simple present tense is applicable to all the 3 times, that is time past, time present, and time future. It has specific functions also. Simple present tense is used to express the habitual actions or the actions that take place regularly. The frequency adverbs like often, seldom, rarely, frequently, usually, normally, generally, every day, regularly, once in a week, twice a month, etc. are used to express iterative actions. For example, Ramya always goes abroad. Madhu always sings in Marathi. We go to Tirupati every year. I call on my parents regularly. Simple present tense is also used to refer to the actions or the states which have no specific time reference. The timeless present, that is, the general truths. Look at the following examples. The earth moves around the sun. Birds build nests in winter. 2 and 2 make 4. Water consists of oxygen and hydrogen. The present tense can be used to refer to an event in the past as if it were happening now. For example, the historic present, as in storytelling, newspaper headlines, historical summaries with the use of past time adverbs. See these examples. King Ashoka looks at the soldiers wounded in the Great War of Kalinga. Veteran freedom fighter dies of cancer. In 1997, Tony Blair becomes Prime Minister. The simple present tense can also be used to refer to the future time when used with the future time adverbs. For example, we leave tomorrow at 10 a.m. The plane leaves next Friday, and so on. The simple present tense can also be used to indicate a present progressive action. For example, here comes the bus. Here goes the train. The bird flies there, and so on. It's very important to remember that the tense of the sentence in maximum cases is indicated by the auxiliary verb and not by the main verb. Main verb generally indicates the aspect. In English, we have different types of sentences like affirmative, negative, interrogative, negative interrogative, and question tags. Generally, we do not use a regular auxiliary verb to indicate the tense only in affirmative sentences. In all other sentences, we use an auxiliary verb to indicate the tense of the sentence. Let's try to understand this with the help of a few examples. Look at the first example. It is an example of affirmative sentence. I write a letter, or its plural is we write a letter. Now, in this sentence, you do not find an auxiliary verb, but this sentence can also be written by using auxiliary verb. For example, I do write a letter, which means I write a letter, or we do write a letter, which means we write a letter. In rest of the sentences, for example, in negative, I do not write a letter or we do not write a letter, tense is indicated by do. In interrogative sentence, do I write a letter or do we write a letter, the tense is again indicated by the auxiliary verb do. In negative interrogative sentence, don't I write a letter or don't we write a letter, tense is again indicated by do not. In the example, I write a letter, don't I, or we write a letter, don't we, the tense is indicated by don't. And in the negative question tag, I don't write a letter, do I? Or we don't write a letter, do we? The tense is again indicated by an auxiliary verb, do. It can be very easily seen that in all these examples, the simple aspect of the verb is used. That means verb is neither used in its progressive form or in its perfective form. Therefore, we can say that all these sentences are written in simple present tense. If all these sentences are to be written in the simple past tense, all we need to do is to change the verb do to its past form did, and all the sentences will automatically become the sentences in the past tense. Simple past tense is also called past indefinite tense. It is indicated by the second form of the verb, which is also called ed form. The simple past tense is used to indicate the action that is completed in the past at a definite past time. This tense is also used without past time expression when the temporal dimension can be understood from the context. Look at these examples. I met him yesterday. There was tremendous rush near the railway station on last Monday. The train was 10 minutes late. Mary brought the present in London. My grandmother carried an umbrella. Did you go to the book exhibition? Now try to understand this with the help of a few examples. Look at the first example. It's an example of affirmative sentence. I wrote a letter or we wrote a letter. It can also be written as I did write a letter or we did write a letter. Negative is I did not write a letter, we did not write a letter. Interrogative is did I write a letter, did we write a letter. Negative interrogative is didn't I write a letter, didn't we write a letter. Positive question tag is I wrote a letter, didn't I? We wrote a letter, didn't we? And negative question tag is I didn't write a letter, did I? We didn't write a letter, did we? In all these examples, the auxiliary verb do is replaced by did to make the past tense of that sentence. To change a sentence from simple present tense to simple past tense, all you need to do is to change do to did. The future tense can refer to an action or state of affairs of the future time. The simple future tense or future indefinite tense is formed by adding will or shall before the base form of the verb. To make it simple, I'll tell you to remove the auxiliary verb in the present tense and replace it by shall or will, and the sentence will automatically become a sentence in the future tense. Let's try to understand this with the help of examples we've already seen in simple present tense and simple past tense. The affirmative sentence is I shall write a letter or we shall write a letter. Negative is I shall not write a letter or we shall not write a letter. Interrogative is shall I write a letter or shall we write a letter. Negative interrogative is shan't I write a letter or shan't we write a letter. Positive question tag is I shall write a letter, shan't I? We shall write a letter, shan't we? And negative question tag is I shan't write a letter, shall I? We shan't write a letter, shall we? See, it's very easy to understand the difference between simple present tense, simple past tense, and simple future tense. Let's try to understand this with the help of an example. Let's take the example, I do not eat chocolates. I do not eat chocolates is the sentence in simple present tense. If we have to make it into the simple past tense, it will become I did not eat chocolates. And if we have to make it into the future tense, it will become I will not eat chocolates. If you try to look at the difference between these sentences, you will see in the first sentence auxiliary verb do is used. In the second sentence auxiliary verb did is used. And in the third sentence auxiliary verb will is used. Everything else remains as it is. Nothing changes. So what we need to remember is that the tense of a sentence is decided by an auxiliary verb rather than the main verb in most of the cases. Now let's try to understand three more tenses, namely present continuous tense, past continuous tense, and future continuous tense. They are also called present progressive, past progressive, and future progressive tense. The progressive aspect of any tense indicates the continuity of action. Thus, the present continuous tense will indicate the continuity of action in the present tense. The past continuous tense will indicate the continuity of action in the past tense, and the future continuous tense will indicate the continuity of the action in future. Present continuous tense is formed by an auxiliary verb indicating present tense and progressive aspect of the verb. For example, I am writing a letter is an example in the present continuous tense. It means that the action of writing is going on at the time of speaking. Present continuous tense is used for actions taking place right in front at the time of speaking. The anterior and the posterior of the action are not known in this tense. Time adverbs like now, at present, at the moment, etc. are commonly used in the sentences. See these examples. Mary is taking a walk in the garden now. He is waiting for the officer at the moment. The baby is crying for milk. There are certain verbs in English which are not used in continuous tense. These verbs are see, hear, smell, notice, recognize, appear, look, seem, want, wish, feel, desire, prefer, love, like, hate, hope, refuse, think, suppose, believe, agree, consider, trust, remember, forget, know, understand, imagine, mean, mind, and so on. These verbs are called stative verbs in English. Stative verbs do not have ing form or the progressive form. Now let's try to understand past continuous tense. Once we've understood the present continuous tense, it's very easy for us to understand past continuous tense. All we need to do to learn the past continuous tense is to learn present continuous tense, because once we change the auxiliary verb in the present continuous tense with its past form, the tense automatically becomes past continuous tense. Look at the example we have seen in the present continuous tense. I am writing a letter. If this sentence has to be changed into past continuous tense, we just have to write was instead of am. So the example in the past continuous tense will become I was writing a letter. Let's consider another example. They are writing the letters. Now if this sentence has to be transformed into past continuous tense, all we need to do is to change are to were, and the sentence will become they were writing the letters. The case of future continuous tense is little bit different. In order to transform a sentence from present continuous tense to future continuous tense, all we need to do is to replace auxiliary verb in present tense by will be or shall be. Let's try to understand this with the example. The example is I am writing a letter in the present continuous tense. Now, am is the auxiliary verb used in the present continuous tense, which indicates that this is the present tense. Now this am is to be replaced by will be or shall be. So if I replace it by will be, it becomes I'll be writing a letter. Or take another example, they are writing a letter. In that case, it becomes they'll be writing a letter. Now let's move on to the next aspect called perfect aspect or perfective aspects, and which indicates the perfect tense. If this aspect is used in present tense, the tense becomes present perfect tense. If this aspect is used in past tense, the tense becomes past perfect tense. And if this aspect is used in the future tense, the tense becomes future perfect tense. Let us first of all talk about present perfect tense. Present perfect tense is formed by auxiliary verbs have or has plus verb in the third form. Let us see the example. I have written a letter. In the example, I have written a letter, have is an auxiliary verb and indicates the present tense. Written is the past participle or perfective form of the verb and indicates that it is a perfect action. So the tense becomes present perfect tense. The present perfect tense is used to indicate the past actions whose time is not given for recently completed past actions. So temporal adverbs are never used with the present perfect tense. Look at these examples. John has broken his arm. I have taken the online exam. The minister has closed the window. Have you seen the drama? The present perfect tense have continuative use, resultative use, and experiential use. For example, in the continuative use, the present perfect tense is used to indicate the past actions with relevance to the present time, as in, we have lived in this house for 10 years, we are still living. Resultative use, the result of the past action is still fresh, as in, Joe has written his name on the board. The name is now seen on the board. And experiential use, to narrate the experience, as in, I have never seen a tiger, don't have the experience. The past perfect tense can be formed by replacing auxiliary verb in the present perfect tense by auxiliary verb in the past perfect tense, that is, replacing have or has by had. The past perfect tense is used for the past action preceding another past action. When a series of past action is viewed from a vantage point of view, we have the concept of near past actions and distant past actions. The near past action is to be said in simple past, and the distant past action are to be said in the past perfect tense. For example, she told me her name after you had left. When I met her, she had crossed the street. I enjoyed food as soon as I had tasted it. They dressed after they had washed themselves. Now, let's get back to our original example, that is, I have written a letter. If this sentence has to be transformed into past perfect tense, you just have to replace have by had, and the tense becomes past perfect tense. That becomes I had written a letter. Future perfect tense. Future perfect tense is formed by writing will or shall before the sentence in the present tense. For example, I have written a letter is transformed into future perfect tense by adding will or shall, and the sentence becomes I will have written a letter or I shall have written a letter. Future perfect tense is used for an action which will be completed by a certain future date or by a certain future time. For example, I shall have written my exercises by Sunday evening, or the engineer will have finished the construction work by coming Diwali. And now let's talk about the last aspect, that is combination of two aspects together, that is perfective aspect and progressive aspect. These two aspects together make the tense perfect continuous. Therefore, the tenses are called present perfect continuous tense, past perfect continuous tense, or the future perfect continuous tense. Let's begin with present perfect continuous tense. Present perfect continuous tense is formed by have, has plus been plus verb in the ing form. For example, I have been writing a letter. This tense is used to indicate an action that began at some time in the past and is still in continuation. Prepositions like since and for are used along with this tense. Since is used for the point of time, since Monday, since January, since 1968, since World War I, and so on. And for is used for period of time, for 10 years, for 2 weeks, for 14 years, or for 3 decades, and so on. Try to understand these examples. I have been waiting for Mary at the bus stop since 7 a.m. My father has been selling cards since 1965. They have been playing for 4 hours. He has been traveling across the country for 10 years. Past perfect continuous tense is formed by replacing have or has by had. That is, the past form of the auxiliary verbs of to have is used in it. The example of present perfect continuous tense is I have been writing a letter, and if it has to be converted into past perfect continuous tense, it becomes I had been writing a letter. Past perfect continuous tense is used for indicating an action that began before a certain point of time in the past, continued up to the past time mentioned, and might extend thereafter. Look at this example. When I met her in Pune, she had been studying BA at Fergusson College. Her studying at the college started prior to my meeting her, and it was in continuation when I met her. Future perfect continuous tense. Future perfect continuous tense is formed by adding shall or will before the present perfect continuous tense. The example in the present perfect continuous tense, that is, I have been writing a letter, becomes I shall have been writing a letter in the future perfect continuous tense. The future perfect continuous tense is used to indicate an action represented as being in progress over a period of time that will end in future. The action has started at a prior time. Look at these examples carefully. By Christmas, I shall have been working in this office for 10 years. It means I still would be in service thereafter. Or look at this example. By 2030, she will have been completing 12 years of teaching experience. That means she would retire after 2030. Or maybe she wouldn't retire. We can't say it for sure. Now let's try to make the same example an interrogative sentence and then try to change it into different tenses. Our original sentence is I write a letter. Its interrogative will be do I write a letter. The sentence do I write a letter is in simple present tense. If we have to change it into the simple past tense, it will become did I write a letter, and if we have to change it into simple future tense, it will become will I write a letter or shall I write a letter. In the present continuous tense, this sentence will be like this. Am I writing a letter? Now, if we have to change it into the past tense, it will become was I writing a letter? And if we have to change it into the future continuous tense, it will become will I be writing a letter? Moving on to the perfect tense, in the present perfect, this sentence will be have I written a letter? If it has to be changed into past perfect tense, it will become had I written a letter. And if it has to be converted into future perfect tense, it will become will I have written a letter? And in the present perfect continuous tense, this sentence will be have I been writing a letter? If it has to be changed into past perfect continuous tense, it will become had I been writing a letter. And if we try to convert it into future perfect continuous tense, it will become will I have been writing a letter? There are plenty of other things that we can speak about the tenses. We can also speak about negative sentences. We can also speak about question tags, positive question tags and negative question tags, and negative interrogative sentences, and many more. All I want you to understand is tense is a very, very simple thing to learn. I hope you have understood it thoroughly. Thank you very much for watching this video. Do not forget to subscribe, share and like.